Hello, good day viewers. Here we are asked to show that A equal to 4pq over q squared minus p squared if p minus ap minus q minus aq all over p plus q equal to p plus q over p minus q. So how can you solve this? Let's first make A the subject of the formula from this equation. So how can we make A the subject? We just apply the change of subject of formula principles. So here p minus ap minus q minus aq all over p plus q is the same as p minus ap minus q minus aq all multiplied by 1 over p plus q. So now we can start by eliminating 1 over p plus q from this side here. So how can we do that? We multiply both sides by the inverse of 1 over p plus q. So what is the inverse of 1 over p plus q? The inverse of a number or a variable is its reciprocal, which is 1 divided by the number or the variable. So that implies that the inverse of 1 over p plus q is 1 divided by 1 over p plus q. So from 1 divided by 1 over p plus q, now taking reciprocal once again, here is the same as 1 times p plus q all over 1, which is p plus q. So multiplying both sides here by p plus q, now we have p minus ap minus q minus aq all multiplied by 1 over p plus q all multiplied by p plus q is equal to p plus q over p minus q times p plus q. Here 1 over p plus q times p plus q is the same as p plus q over p plus q, which is 1. So now 1 times p minus ap minus q minus aq is p minus ap minus q minus aq, which equal to p plus q over p minus q times p plus q. Here p plus q is the same as p plus q over 1, so p plus q over p minus q times p plus q over 1. Now multiplying them, now we are going to have p plus q times p plus q all over p minus q. So here expanding p plus q times p plus q, p times p is p squared, p times q is pq, plus q times p, which is also pq, plus q times which is q squared, and now equal to p squared plus pq plus pq plus q squared. Pq plus pq is 2pq, so substituting here now, p minus ap minus q minus aq equal to p squared plus 2pq plus q squared all over p minus q. Now coming back here, if you collect the like terms, we are going to have p minus ap minus aq minus q equal to p squared plus 2pq plus q squared all over p minus q. Here, since we are making a the subject of the formula and we have a here and here, we can eliminate this p and this q from this side to the other side. So how can we do that? Since this is plus p, we subtract p from both sides, and here this is minus q, we add q to both sides. So here, subtracting p and adding q, we have p minus ap minus aq minus q minus p plus q equal to p squared plus 2pq plus q squared all over p minus q minus p plus q. If you collect the like terms, we are going to have p minus p plus q minus ap minus aq equal to p squared plus 2pq plus q squared all over p minus q all minus p plus q. Here p minus p is 0, q minus q is 0, so minus ap minus aq now equal to p squared plus 2pq plus q squared all over p minus q minus p plus q. Here, putting minus p plus q into brackets, we're going to have minus open bracket p minus q. because minus times plus p is minus p, and minus times minus q is plus q. So since minus open bracket p minus q is the same as minus open bracket p minus q over 1, minus ap minus q equal to p squared plus 2pq plus q squared all over p minus q, all minus p minus q over 1. Now combining this into a single fraction, here the denominator is p minus q and here is 1. So what is the lowest common multiple of p minus q and q1? It is 1 times p minus q, which is p minus q. So here now, p minus q divided by p minus q is 1. 1 times p squared plus 2pq plus q squared is p squared plus 2pq plus q squared. And here, p minus q divided by 1 is p minus q. P minus q times minus open bracket p minus q is minus open bracket p minus q times p minus q. Expanding now, minus p times p is minus p squared, minus p times minus q equal to plus pq, minus times minus q times p is plus pq, and minus times minus q times minus q is minus q squared. Here plus pq is 2pq. So substituting here now, minus ap minus aq equal to p squared plus 2pq plus q squared minus p squared plus 2pq minus q squared all over p minus q. Here we have p squared and here minus p squared. P squared minus p squared is 0. Here also we have q squared and here minus q squared. Plus q squared minus q squared is also 0. So we are left with 2pq plus 2pq. 2pq plus 2pq is 4pq. So minus ap minus aq is equal to 4pq. So here, since we have a here and here, we can factor out a. Factorizing a minus ap minus aq, now we are going to have a open bracket minus p minus q. So now a open bracket minus p minus q is equal to 4pq. We still have to eliminate minus p minus q from this side to make a the subject. To do that, we divide both sides by minus p minus q. So now a open bracket minus p minus q divided by minus p minus q is equal to 4pq over p minus q divided by minus p minus q. A open bracket minus p minus q divided by minus p minus q is the same as a minus p minus q all over minus p minus q. Minus p minus q cancels minus p minus q. Now a equal to 4pq over p minus q divided by minus p minus q. Taking reciprocal, since this is the same as minus p minus q over 1, a equal to 4pq over p minus q times 1 over minus p minus q. So 4pq times 1 equal to pq. P minus q times minus p minus q is equal to p minus q open bracket minus p minus q. Expanding p minus q times minus p minus q, now we're going to have p times minus p is minus p squared. P times minus q is minus pq. Minus q times minus p is plus pq. And minus q times minus q is plus q squared. So here, minus pq plus pq equal to 0. We are left with minus p squared plus q squared, which is the same as q squared minus p squared. So a equal to 4pq over q squared minus p squared.